Hey guys, Frosty on the Mile again, back with part 3 of the Green Mile, and we're on Coffee's hands. And this is where the story starts to take a turn for the interesting, and we begin to see the beginnings of the unraveling of the mystery. So we get to hear a lot about William Wharton and his beginning days on the Mile in this book. He attempts to kill one of the guards on day 1, like we mentioned. Another time he pisses on one of the other guards. Another time he spits a whoopie pie in the guard's face. Spends a lot of time in solitary in this one because he's a general all-around douchebaggery of a person. So that is the introduction to Wharton. As we know, the warden's wife has brain cancer, and Paul is still in the throes of a really bad urinary tract infection. But there's where all of the talk of Paul Edgecombe's busted up waterworks comes to the point. And the point is that John Coffey sees that he's in pain and there's something wrong with him, so he tells him to come over here and come into the cell. There's something I need to tell you. And against his better judgment, Paul goes into Coffey's cell with him and sits down on the bunk next to him and asks him, what did you want to talk about? And at that point, John Coffey lays hands on Paul Edgecombe, and then we begin to see what Coffey can do. He literally takes the infection out of Paul Edgecombe's body and sort of takes it into himself and then spits it out. So John Coffey is a healer. And now the reader, as well as Paul Edgecombe, begins to doubt the veracity of the story. He heals his UTI. It's gone. And Paul thinks about it, and he's very confused, and he begins to realize that John Coffey has powers, and he has the power to heal. He can't control it, doesn't really know when it comes on. Not all the lights are working in Coffey's attic, but he does have that ability. And once you realize that about him, you can pretty much see where the rest of the novel is going to go from that point. Paul begins to have some doubts. He begins to do some investigation into John Coffey's background, talks to the journalist that reported on him. Not much is known about John Coffey before he's arrested. There's really no trace of him, no backstory that they can find. He's never committed any crimes. He basically appears out of nowhere. You know, not that he's appeared out of nowhere, but he basically just shows up and immediately gets arrested when we first find him. So not much is known about the backstory of Coffey, all shrouded in mystery. And the book ends with their run-through of Delacroix's execution, which is going to be the next day. So they run through their run-throughs of his execution and how it's going to go, and everything kind of seems to be on track for where it's supposed to be. And Paul he has a bad feeling about the rest of the day. Something weird is going to happen, and the book ends with Piercy finally enacting his revenge on Delacroix, as he's been planning for all of these books. And at the end of the book, Mr. Jingles gets out of Delacroix's cell because he's chasing the little spool that Delacroix keeps throwing at him. And right then and there, Piercy pounces and steps on Mr. Jingles, breaking his back and killing him. So the book ends with the death of the mouse. And now we are on to part 4.